Good afternoon. Welcome to this online session about COVID-19 public library closures and their impact on New South Wales public library users. My name is Ellen Forsyth. I acknowledge that I'm recording this session from the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you work and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this session. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal people and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of New South Wales. Today we have the opportunity to hear from researchers from Charles Sturt University who undertook this fabulous research. And you'll have opportunity to ask questions, but I would ask that you remain muted during the presentation, but you will be able to be unmuted afterwards. Please ask any questions via chat. If you've got any technology issues, please ask them through chat, and then hopefully I'll be able to problem solve them through chat as well. We are recording the presentation, but not the questions and answers, and I will hand over to the researchers now. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ellen. So, thanks everyone for coming along. I'm going to present the first bit of this overview of the project, and then I'm going to hand over to Jane. And then, yes, as Ellen mentioned, so hopefully there'll be some time for some questions if you've got any. This research, as you can see, is funded by the State Library, so many thanks to them, but not just for the dollars, but particularly for Ellen, our main contact there, for all the liaison work she's been doing and coordination and everything. And then also a big thanks to our library partners. So without the public libraries, the particular 4 public libraries that we had involved in this particular project, it wouldn't happen. So I'm not going to mention at the moment they're on this presentation, they're A, B, C, D. You know who you are if you're here, but a big thanks to those 4 library networks. It was through them that we distributed the survey. As you'll see in a moment, we got a huge number of responses, and that reflects very much on their what they on their on their relationships with all their users. What was I going to say? I'm sorry, I've lost my track. What we're going to do is just an overview of the research that we undertook, and sorry. We're just going to provide, sorry, if you go back, Jane, to the first slide, just providing an overview, but there's a lot more detail in the report that's on the State Library website, and we've got a URL at the end if you'd like more details. We've also written a report, a paper for Public Library Quarterly. And if we can get it through the Public Library Quarterly Journal review process, hopefully we will. That'll be there with lots more detail for you to read, and we'll be very happy to provide reference for that. The people on the CSU side of the team, as you can see, we've got Jane coming in for the second half, and we've also got Hamid here, and Simon isn't able to be with us today, but he was also very much part of the team. Next slide. Who's doing the slides? Jane, are you doing the slides for me?
Yes, I'll look after them. Just tell me when you want to change.
Okay, thanks. So this research was done very much during the COVID the COVID period, and although there was obviously many issues that the libraries had to contend with COVID, this in a way was an opportunity for us to look at what the effects of the closures due to COVID were, and although there were many good things that were done to work around these enforced closures. There was certainly anecdotal evidence that the closures had been a big issue for many users, and there was quite a bit of evidence. We've done previous research around how the public libraries had coped with COVID, and this was a response to some of the users still feeling as though they needed to visit the actual library. So it's a bit of a window for us, and though it wasn't the Chicago, was it Chicago Library that we were working with, that we had the same kind of situation where we thought that quite a few users wanted to get back into the libraries, and we were wanting to ask why this was the case. So move on. So the questions that we were asking was how much and why did the users miss the libraries? So not just that they just wanted to get back, but why did they want to get back? And by extension, then this question leads to answers as to what did the users actually value about the spaces, the physical spaces that they wanted to get back into. So we've done research before about why libraries themselves thought the users appreciated their services, including their space, their physical spaces in libraries. That's come up a lot, of course, in the literature, the value of libraries at third places and so forth. But also in the literature and in the work that we've done before about the mission statements of Australian public libraries, it's quite clear that there are other things that are related to physical spaces that the libraries themselves at least thought were important, facilitating access to physical information and physical resources as well as online resources, social connectedness, a venue for them for users to socialize and so forth. So we're interested to see how the literature and the research we've done before around users' appreciation of physical space is actually aligned with how they might have missed the spaces. So very grateful for the 4 library networks that volunteered to be part of the research. A good scattering of libraries from across the state, all very collaborative and very informative, and we did well with all of them, and thanks again to Ellen for liaising. As you can see, a couple from Sydney, and one from the southern part of New South Wales, and one from the northern part, so 2 regional ones, and 2 ones from Sydney. So a good cross-section of different kinds of library communities from across the state. We thought that would give us a pretty good overview of, or a good sample of users, and luckily we got some really good response rates from pretty much all of the libraries. So the research was a fairly straightforward questionnaire survey. Distributed. So of course this was about how they missed the libraries during the closure. So it's just after or just at the tail end of the last lockdown. So the missing of the libraries, the not being able to visit the libraries was very much still fresh in the user's mind. So October to November 2021. It was open to all adult users, even if they hadn't visited the library all that often. But if they hadn't visited at all, obviously they wouldn't be missing the library, so we didn't ask them that question, but we still asked them a few other questions. It was anyone who was over 18. We did get responses about their children and so forth, so it did cover to some extent what the children also missed about not being able to visit the library. Medium length of survey, as you can see, 16 questions. And the first part were questions about how they had visited the library before it was closed, in terms of frequency, in terms of duration. And then we moved on to how much and why they had missed, if they had done, visiting the library. And then we finished up with some demographics, so just to make sure that we've got a reasonably representative profile, reflective of the general profile of the library visitor population. It's analysed in the normal kind of a way, so there are some closed questions which we analysed statistically, and the lots of free text comments, particularly around the why question of why you missed the library, and that was analysed thematically and qualitatively. So as you can see there, so a fantastic number of responses from Network A, whoever they are. So very well done. The way that they were distributed, the survey was distributed to the different users, did vary across the different networks, and that's probably a lot to do with why the number of responses varies a lot. So in some cases, there were social media channels to use, in other cases, email. In other cases, a combination, sometimes newsletters, in a few cases, the physical library was open, so there are a few other channels possible. But overall, I mean, in total, we've got, as you can see there, well over 1,000, 1,200, 1,300 responses, and we thought that was a really good number to work with. There were differences, demographic differences across the state, across the networks, and those are really mostly, we think, reflective of the different demographic profiles of those communities and of the user groups. So the regionals, A and D, remember, the regionals, they've got a median age that's quite a bit older there, and the ones in Sydney tend to be a bit younger, lots of students and so forth studying there, using the library. So different demographics, but the sorts of things that you would expect, more females than males. More English as a second language for the people in Sydney, and so forth. But more or less what you'd expect, a good cross-section of the user population for across the whole state. The responses to the questions about how they'd visited the libraries before the closures was, again, what you'd expect. So quite a lot of variation from people who visit it, all the time, almost every day, to those who visit just on occasion, and lots in between. And the typical would be, something around once or twice a month. And again, this is what we'd expect in general, with lots of variation. And in terms of duration of those visits, which could make a difference, of course, in terms of how they missed missed visiting the library. As you can see, typically around 30 minutes. Quite a few would visit more briefly, quite a few for longer periods, but maybe not so often, and some with varied amounts of duration, but a lot of people with a particular pattern. Again, what probably we'd expect. Next, Jane. So this is actually the start of the heart of the questions. So this is actually how much the users, this is the closed question, how much they missed visiting the library when it was closed. Remember, it's only just been closed in most cases, and it's been closed for not an extensive period of time. This is the last lockdown, so we're talking about a couple of months, maybe just a few weeks in some cases. So given that, it's not forever, and we can see that this particular sample did miss the libraries quite a lot. Obviously, it's self-selecting and it's self-reporting. You'd expect the people who answered the survey to be particularly enthusiastic about their libraries, but we think that this is pretty strong evidence that they want to get back. Quite a lot of people, very significant percentages there had missed, even if it's only for a few weeks, the library a great deal. Almost half missed it at least quite a lot or a great deal, and the vast majority had missed it a bit, at least a bit. So the question then, of course, is why, and that was what we're particularly interested in. But it confirms what we thought from the evidence that we'd picked up on, that they wanted to get back. It's not that they'd been turned off or they were completely happy just to stick with what was delivered online. They wanted to get back to those physical spaces. Next. So before we go into the why, and that's where we've got lots of qualitative data with lots of comments that we're going to summarize in a moment. Another question that we asked was, so do you want to get back? What's the future looking like after COVID when the library reopens? And reassuringly, most want to go back in the same kind of a way. And more want to go back and want to visit more frequently than less frequently. So it's not like, things have changed after COVID and in a way that means that they're no longer so interested in the physical spaces. If anything, they're more interested in getting back, as you can see there. But overall, at least as much as they were doing, they just want to get back. Next slide, Jane. Thanks. So we asked them why, particularly for those who wanted to visit more often in the future, and the sort of answers you might expect came up. They had just, it was kind of the point of the research. They'd missed those visits, and that's where we're going next with why they missed them, and they appreciated it more than ever. So they wanted to make more use of those spaces in the future when they were allowed to. And also there was some commentary around how the COVID situation had a bearing on them wanting to go back, having been closeted at home for so long. They wanted to get out and about, and they thought that was going to be the future as well. They would need to get out and about. They'd had enough of staying at home. They realised that just being at home all the time, it might be a bit of a novelty for a few weeks, but it soon wears off. And having that third place, that third space, or at least having some kind of distance from home, some other place to go, was certainly part of why they wanted to go back even more than they had been before. So I now hand over to Jane, who's going to go more into the why of why they wanted to go back and get back to the visiting that they were doing before. Thanks, Jane.
Thanks, Philip. Okay, so we asked them questions about, well, why did you miss using a library? What was it that you weren't able to do when the libraries were physically shut that you wished you could do? This is the sort of information we were getting. So you can see here across the top, browsing and reading books and magazines was by far the most missed thing in all the things that you offer through your library. So I've got all these different categories here. These were the top 8 things, but by far the most, 48% of people were missing being able to actually physically get into the library, walk through the shelves and seeing what you've got on the shelf, which was an interesting thing. These things are also really important, obviously, but that whole saying, we've got ebooks now, so you can read ebooks, is not a strong argument for what the library can offer in terms of their physical spaces being really, really important to people. So it's a really strong argument that you can use to say, this is why we need to maintain our physical spaces and support them financially, rather than just saying, we've got ebooks now, we don't need a physical library. We also looked at, what have we got here? The activities that people miss doing the most. We've got that there. So this is the median rating. So this is all a bit mathsy, but what it's really saying again here is that browsing and reading books was very much the most important thing that people were missing. Probably the least missed thing were things like the Wi-Fi, which I've actually found that a bit surprising. It could be something to do with the type of people that were answering the survey, that they weren't missing the Wi-Fi. Perhaps they had other options that they could use. Asking for help, attending events and attending community events were also less missed than the actual getting in there amongst the books and having a look at what your collection's got on the shelf. So in terms of what was missed, we sort of grouped them into 4 main categories. And what we'll do now is just have a quick whiz through those 4 and show you some of the words that people were using when they were describing each of these 4 things about how they missed them when the libraries were shut. So we've got activities, the environment itself, so the physical spaces, your resources, so your collections, and the whole concept of coming as an outing. So the ability to walk in and spend time in the library there. So in terms of activities, these were the sort of things we were hearing. Browsing the shelves is really important. Being able to have a place to take your children, somewhere to sit and study, being with other people. This was a really interesting one, social interaction. So obviously we missed being with other people, but a lot of the content we were hearing from people were saying that we like coming into libraries to be not necessarily mixing with people, but being alone together, which I thought was really interesting, that they don't really need to hang out with other people there so much, but they just like having the library as a place to go where there are other people like themselves. And a place to read, because the home is not always a quiet and conducive place for reading. So they were the activities that were mostly missed. In terms of the environment, these are the sort of words we were hearing about why people love coming into your physical environments. So, peace and quiet, it's relaxing, it's friendly, it's warmer than my house, calm places, this whole idea of safety, the idea of belonging somewhere where you can walk in and you feel that you're at home. And it's an alternative to the home, but it still feels like home. So that sort of harks back to that whole idea of the third space. It's not home, it's not work, it's somewhere else that you also feel comfortable and somewhere you want to be. And this idea of being surrounded by books, which is interesting. So you don't even have to interact with books, just something about having books in the space makes it a place that people miss. So that was really interesting. So that was your environment. In terms of the resources, so looking at the collections that you actually have, this whole idea of real books, people still like holding on to pieces of paper when they're reading, which is, I understand completely. But then there's also things that they couldn't get through a digital screen, so perhaps newspapers, DVDs, magazines, even audiobooks, which is interesting because you can get them sort of through your websites quite easily, but it was still mentioned as something that they missed. And of course, the computers and the internet, so people coming in to use your computer and IT infrastructure there. And then this whole idea of an outing, having a place to go to. Particularly, we heard that from people with little kids, and they're using that as a place to go when they're all bouncing off the walls and everyone needs to get out and then have a bit of a change of scene. The library is highly valued as that sort of a place. Some other words we were hearing when we were talking about what they were missing, things like the atmosphere, the friendliness of the staff. The library is part of my daily life was a lovely quote that we've actually used as the title of an article that we've written, because it reflects so nicely this integration of library into life, and the users in the library and the libraries in the life of the user as well. So we really like that quote there. This whole idea again of tranquility, like-minded people, a place where people feel safe, and a place where everybody's welcome was a really strong message of what we were hearing. So to conclude from the research, what we've come up with is 6 main points that you might be able to use to advocate for your library, particularly your spaces, to say that, this is why we need to keep putting money into these places. This is why they're really important to people. So the value of the buildings themselves, the fact that they serve really diverse communities, they have an effect on people. They have a really positive effect on people's lives. They're seen as community hubs, and they're valued through the resources that you provide, and of course the wonderful staff that you employ and the incredible work that they do with these communities and all the people that visit them. So we're just going to look at those really quickly each. So firstly, the overall value of public libraries, 90% of people who responded to the survey said they missed it. They really wanted to come back to the library, and that was something that was important to them. The spaces are valued in many different ways, and people will often do different things when they get there. They're not there just for one thing. They'll often have multiple activities that they want to undertake when they get to the library. Serving diverse communities, of course, it's no news to you. Looking after disadvantaged groups, a really important part of their lives. There's somewhere safe they can go where they won't be judged, and they can use the resources and be as normal as anybody else while they're in the spaces that you're providing for them. This whole idea of an effective experience. So this is the effect that libraries are having on people. They're seeing them as safe havens, they're soothing, they're relaxing, they're places where you don't even have to have a particular purpose. This was an interesting one. We actually sort of looked at this twice and thought, is this what we're really hearing? There's a lack of purpose. People don't always come into the library with a specific goal in mind. They might just have half an hour to fill in. So they'll rock on down to the library and see what's going on. And they might borrow a book or two there. They might read some things to their kids, but they don't always have a specific purpose in mind when they're heading out to do that. So that was an interesting one, we thought. And this whole idea of library as a place of escape. So it's somewhere different to the rest of your world. It's somewhere where you can go where you know you'll be safe, there's friendly people, and it does act as that sort of safe space and haven for you. Library as community hub, increasingly viewed as such rather than just a repository for books. It's important for people connecting with each other, and that whole idea also of being alone together, which I thought was a really interesting one. And the flexibility of the spaces, so they can be used for many different things, and that the users can engage with the spaces in whatever ways that they need to at the time. So if they just want somewhere quiet to sit, it's there. If they want to attend a program, that's there. If they want to read to their kids, they can do that too. There's just that whole flexibility of being able to use the library in the way that they need to at the time was highly valued by them. Finally, the last two there, the value of the library resources. So this is your collections. That whole argument about wanting to be amongst the collection rather than viewing it online was really interesting. The ability to read online is fantastic, obviously, when we couldn't get out of our houses, but people really, really wanted to be able to get back in the building and be near the books, walk around and see what's there. And I think that's a really an interesting argument for you to be able to use to say, this is why we need physical space in our libraries devoted to books. It's a trend to move books away from the public in preference for open spaces or study spaces or program spaces. but the capacity to be able to walk amongst the books is really, really important to your users, and something that you might want to use as an argument to maintaining space for physical collections. The positive impact of library staff, of course, there's not many places you can go to these days where you can be pretty sure someone's going to be welcoming and kind and meet you with a smile, and will quite often know your name and know your kids' names. But you guys do that beautifully, and that was highly valued by the people who answered our survey. So they were the 6 main things that we found. We'll open up for questions, but we've just got a couple of links here for you. This is a link to the research group that we're part of that did this research, and this is a link to the final report for the project that we wrote for the State Library of New South Wales, and that's obviously open access, so anybody can jump in and have a read if you'd like to learn a bit more about what we've found. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, we'll be able to get the links available to you. Please put your, we'll get it so that you can, yeah. I'm going to stop recording now, and please start thinking about your questions, and feel free to add them to the chat to start with, but you can also use the hands up option under reactions as well.